speaking. Thank you for attending in Zoom or in person. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Due notice of today's meeting is provided to the public and each member of the Board of Education as required by law. Tina, will you please take attendance? Present.
Present. Present.
Present.
Present.
Present. Present.
At this time, I have a motion to accept the agenda for November 25th, 2024, regular session as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
At this time, we're going to go to student recognition. Dr. Sinha.
Thank you, Mr. Cilio. So this evening, we wanted to recognize our students who will be participating at the NYSSMA State Conference. And we have Ms. Hauser here. Ms. Hauser, do you want to come up and share a little bit about how this is so prestigious for our students to be invited for this conference for all of our educators? Sure.
Good evening, everybody. So each year we have students at our high school perform in the NYSSMA Festival. And at this NYSSMA Festival, they receive a rating. And so students who receive 100 have the opportunity to possibly be selected to go to the All-State Festival, which takes place in Rochester, New York. And so what happens is in each of the rooms, each judge ranks their hundreds. And so the hundreds of the hundreds have an opportunity to go to the All-State Festival. And so this year we have a number of students who are selected to go to the festival. We are beyond excited. And I would like to invite them up.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay,
please.
so if you're here, come on up. And we have Mr. Delamonica with us as well.
Ms. Hauser, should we introduce each one of them?
Can I have them introduce themselves?
Yes, of
Sure.
course.
Okay. So say your name and say if you're an alternate or what ensemble.
Hi, I'm Ava Malone. I'm a senior here, and I'm an alternate for jazz.
Hi, my name is Lilith Mangal, and I'll be in the wind ensemble playing flute.
Hi, I'm Amy Shao, and I'll be playing violin in the string orchestra.
Hi, I'm Julia Wang. I'm playing the flute, and I'll be in the symphonic band.
Hi, I'm Audrey Pressois, and I'll be singing in the All-State Mixed Chorus.
Hi, I'm Haley Boschnagel, and I'll be singing in the All-State Mixed Chorus.
Hi, I'm Alexa Marshall, and I'll be singing the All-State Mixed Chorus.
Wow. Congratulations. Yeah, wait, we'll get a picture taken, so stay right there.
Congratulations.
Really want to thank our students, and it just showcases our performing arts program here in our district. It is really the hard work of our students and our faculty and staff who are involved, and we couldn't be any prouder of you. Thank you for coming to this evening.
Mrs. DiCaprio, at this time, will you quickly do the treasurer's report?
Thank you. This is the treasurer's report for September 2024. We had a cash balance at the beginning of the month of $49,710,468. During September, we had receipts totaling 2,210,686. We had disbursements of 10,729,134, leaving us a closing balance of 41,192,020. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. DeCapua. At this time, we're going to pass the mic over to our counsel from Gercio and Gercio, Mr. Doug Spencer, who will talk about what I'm sure a lot of people here to talk about or listen about, regionalization and the recent proposal by NYSED. Thank you, Mr. Cilio.
So that'll work just fine. Thank you. So in the various school districts throughout the island, there has been some, I want to say, concern, right, regarding regionalization and the state's plan and so forth. So I think it's important for communities and for boards and for administration to understand what exactly is required of them at this time, as opposed to trying to think ahead, think down the road 10 years as to what may or may not happen. So to that end, what I can tell you right now, what you have in front of you as a community and what you have in front of you as a board and administration are a number of things, right? And I'll read from it just to make sure that we have it right, so that there is no confusion. So those things include completing what the state has referred to as a strength and needs tool. And then the next phase in that piece is convening with school districts and stakeholders, and then the development of an interim progress report, right? And then ultimately, the idea behind all of this is putting together a regionalization plan. And the state has set forth a timeline for all this to occur, with the plan ultimately coming to fruition in and around the spring of 2025. Okay. So now, with that being said, that is all that is required of your school district at this time. Okay. We're not going to try and surmise that down the road that there's going to be different boundaries, or that school or pupils from different school districts will be coming into Garden City, or vice versa, right? So the idea behind the state's regionalization plan, as stated, is to increase collaboration by and between school districts on the island, right? A laudable task, right? But something that's already being done and has been done in school districts across the island for decades, right? So when we're talking about shared services and classrooms and sports teams, right? These are all things that school districts routinely do, okay? So what the idea here is that, and our understanding is that the state is seeking to increase that collaboration by and between school districts, right? So now there's a difference between the regulations, the emergency regulations that were initially adopted, and what we ultimately believe will be the regulations that will be finalized, right? And we know that because we're watching how the frequently asked questions have evolved over the course of the comment period, right? So at this time, you cannot change the emergency regulations, right? They are what they are, right? And so, but what you're doing as a public and as a community, what the board is doing, what districts across the island are doing, are submitting correspondence, setting forth their concerns with what the regulations say. And what's happening that we see is we're seeing this evolution in how the state is interpreting the regulations through its frequently asked questions. So what was once an understanding or belief that certain things were mandatory. So for example, that all school districts would be bound by the contents of the plan that's adopted. That is no longer the case, right? So if we're watching those frequently asked questions, we see that school districts are only required to put together this survey, engage in this discussion with the component school districts, in this case, Nassau County BOCES, right? And the component districts, and then discuss, collaborate on what is going to be the contents of a plan. Ultimately, that plan is not going, the school district is not going to be bound by a plan that it doesn't agree to be bound by, right? There's no requirement that Garden City, for example, have anything in that plan that it's being bound by, or that if other school districts agree to put certain things in the plan, that Garden City is going to be bound by those terms. The only way Garden City can be bound by any of the terms in the plan that's put together is if Garden City says, yes, we agree to that. Okay, so now, but that doesn't mean that the school district is not going to be, and I'll use the term ever vigilant, right? And mindful of the state and what it's doing and what the future holds, right? So while I noted at the very beginning that there may be some confusion, there may be some very forward thinking in terms of what we think the state's going to do or what they're planning. We're not going to do that right now, but what we're going to do is stay vigilant in terms of watching what the state does, right? So for example, moving forward into the future, if the state, we believe, oversteps, right, its authority, if it does that, that's when the school district jumps into action, right? Whether that's through litigation or otherwise, and says to the state, you can't do that, right? And whether that's through the courts or some other forum, the school district will be vigilant in watching to make sure that that doesn't happen. And to the extent that it does, that's when the school district will move on it. Okay, Cecilio, do you want to chime in with what the school district's going to do currently?
So just in terms of things we've done so far, obviously we have a bigger crowd this week than we had last week, but we did go through the presentation on regionalization. The board has sent a letter along with many of the coalition school districts on 10/31. And then we did the presentation on 11/12. That letter was posted and sent to NYSED stating our opposition to what we initially read was an expectation of regionalization and, for common folks, pooling of resources. So the board, just to set the tone for people in the room, we're against that. We are not supportive, at least of the initial reading of it. They've since modified some of the language in the Q&A, as Mr. Spencer just alluded to. They're in a comment period. They posted their initial proposal, if that's the right term for it. They're taking comments. What comments they'll take and how many, still a little bit unclear, but there's been specific guidance from our district along with neighboring districts in the community suggesting modifications to key terms that I think more clearly in our view articulate that the plans are not to push this further than what Mr. Spencer just outlined, which we're hoping will be achieved hopefully in the next couple of weeks through the comment period. If those changes are made and they're articulated, I think consistent with what we have asked for, or we've suggested, what other districts have suggested, I think hopefully the issue will kind of die and it'll be more of a collaboration and more of a way to use resources a little bit better, but not necessarily a fear of broader regionalization of our school district and loss of local control. If the language is not modified, I think we have had more discussions than I care to talk about what the iterations of what that could be. We don't want to speculate, but we do have a game plan of how we would attack each of those different situations, but we're not at the point where we would articulate those in public because I think there's too many iterations to walk through here in public. So, the board, every member here is contributing, whether it's taking meetings, talking to neighboring school district superintendents. Dr. Sinha has done that. All the trustees have talked to either local school districts. They've attended meetings. They've gone out in public and stated their concerns. They've met with various agencies that are involved in the discussion process, whether it's BOCES or NYSED. Everybody here is advocating for language that I think most of the people here are concerned about, as I can see from the signs in the back, that we're not in favor of losing local control of our school districts. So from where I sit, I think from where the board sits, we're a fierce advocate for our district and protecting our resources and having local control. But as Mr. Spencer said, I don't think there's much more we can do at this particular time other than to continue to be vigilant and position ourselves both publicly and with our local agencies that we are going to comply because we are required to comply with what they've asked for. They've asked from us, from the school district, from an information and survey perspective, but that we are not supportive of any sort of forced regionalization if that's their position going forward.
Right. So essentially, at this point, the school district's approach is two prongs. One is you will fulfill your obligations that you're required to by the the emergency regulation. You'll complete the tool, you'll engage in a collaborative conversation, and that's where you are on that piece. The other prong is going to be watching what the state does. Okay, so the state's meeting in and around the middle of December. Our expectation of the state is that the emergency regulations will then coincide with how they've modified the frequently asked questions over the course of the last month or two, right? And that is removing this requirement piece as opposed to the collaborative approach that we've been talking about.
You know, and I would say there's a healthy dose of skepticism from my seat and I think the other trustees about what the goal is of this process, but we can only deal with the facts as we see them today. One of the things on the agenda tonight is to pass a resolution that kind of clearly articulates our thoughts on regionalization and the plan, and to make it known to the state again, I guess for the third time, our position on the proposals and what we expect to hopefully come out of the comment period. And maybe we're going to break with normal protocol because I assume this is a topic that people want to discuss. At this time, we'll open up the mic if anybody would like to ask any questions of Mr. Spencer or the board regarding what we were just discussing.
I just ask a question and
Sure.
you could address
Sure.
what a lot of people have. Maybe you might shortcut it, but so, Mr. Spencer, so I think a lot of people have reached out to all of us separately about the question of under this emergency rule, is there a capability that other district students will be able to come to Garden City schools?
Thank you, Liz. That is not something that's contemplated by that emergency regulation. It's not something, it's not a requirement of that emergency regulation. Like I said, the only thing that's required right now is the collaboration piece.
So just to make that clear for everyone, that there's no possibility unless we as the board or community consent to something like that kind of relationship with another district, that is not something that they have the power to do under the emergency promulgation.
Right. So based on the information that the state is putting out as of right now, Garden City School District will not be required to do anything that it doesn't agree to or consent to.
So I guess if you'd like to ask a question, please step up to the mic and just, if you could, give us your name and address, and happy to address the questions the best we can.
Thank you so much for the opportunity for us to voice our concern. I sent an email earlier today, just going to read that out loud kind of. So I guess before that, thank you for that clarification of that, I guess the opt-out option. But to that particular point, is it written black and white in the regulation right now?
Right now, it's not.
Right? Okay. So I think that's the biggest concern that I have reading the entire plan, because as you have voiced before in the last meeting, the plan right now is just it's not a concrete plan. It's basically asking for information that they already had. And they're asking for you to provide the same information without saying what they're really trying to do. But the plan right now, it does seems to place authority of the state for them to tell us what to do, or at least to propose a plan in the future when that plan actually factualized, for us to determine, do we agree to that or not? Is that correct understanding so far?
So the fear, right? The fear is that there's going to be this plan developed, right? And say, for example, Garden City participates in it, doesn't want to add to it in any way, but a plan is developed, and whether Garden City likes it or not, it's going to be imposed upon it, right? That's the fear.
Mhm.
And that's a justifiable fear based on a plain reading of the regulation, right? However, right, through the FAQs that have been coming out over the last couple of weeks, it appears, we don't know yet, but it appears that that is going to be more of a consensual relationship between component districts as opposed to a mandatory one. So when we talk about a plan that's developed, when you say opt-out, I'll be more specific in terms of it's a consensual collaboration. So Garden City will either agree or not agree to be bound by any of the particular terms that are in that collaborative agreement, right? That's where we expect it to come out, but as of right now, that's not what it says.
Okay, so I guess my next question will be, right now, we don't know what the plan actually will be. And the goal seems to be like they're trying to be collaborative with all the districts. With that, I guess with that hope in mind, if in the future, if it turns south and it comes into a direction that we don't want to go into, do we have the legislation right now written, it just, not just the FAQ, a legislation, black and white, saying that as the local district, BOE, you do have the authority or the decision to make to say, no, we don't agree to this, and we will not get any penalty for that.
So there's a number of things at play there. So to the extent that we believe as a school district that the state is overreaching, the remedy is we litigate, right? We go to court, we seek an injunction, stopping the school, stopping the state from imposing this on Garden City, right? That's one option.
Mhm.
The other piece of that, and it's a little bit more complicated, is all the different statutes and regulations that stand in the way of the state doing that, right? So for example, they're not legislating or through emergency regulations in a vacuum, right? So school districts, school systems, they're regulated by, a myriad of different regulations and laws. It's actually one of the biggest set of laws in the state is the education. So for them to attempt to override that is going to take more than an emergency regulation, right? They'd be countermanding the law that's been in place, right? The law of the land, forever, we'll say. So they can't just do that by simple emergency regulation coming down from the state education department.
Okay.
So that would take a change in the law.
Okay, so thank you so much. And so with that, let me come back to some questions I had earlier. So I guess along that same line, right? So we know that you guys already have sent a letter voicing the opposition to the plan, at least as of right now, as it is right now. How is this received in addition to that change or that change in that Q&A that you mentioned before? Has there been any additional communication from the state
So
voicing?
what we suspect, there hasn't been a communication, let's say, for example, with Garden City. However, so if we look at the beginning in October, when it first came out, right, school districts were very quick to say, we don't like this, and the letters immediately went out. So it's not necessarily just Garden City, right? So we're talking about all of the island, we're talking about the state. So all of these school districts on the island, not all of them, but a vast majority, right? They're writing the state saying, we don't agree to this, we don't agree to this. In addition to that, they're submitting their own changes to the regulations, right? The things that they don't agree with, the things that they'd like to see changed. So with all of that that's occurring, right? And it's not, like, as we said, not just the one letter, it's 2 letters, it's 3 letters, and it'll be more, right? In addition to the comments, right? We don't see that reflected in the regulations yet, right? But what we do see is we see these changes in the FAQs, right? The Q&As that the state is putting out, they've changed over the last couple of weeks. And from what it appears, they're taking into account the concerns and the comments by all these school districts, right? Now, the concerns of Garden City, it's the same concerns as Jericho, as Massapequa, as Levittown, right? All these districts have the same concerns, overreaching, right? Right? Our school, our rules, right? That's the idea, right? We don't want the state overreaching into things that are Garden City.
Yep,
Okay.
exactly. So I guess what are the next steps in terms of legal options? If all these discussions are not going well, and I'm cognizant, I don't want to take up too much time. Let me take up, I guess, let me just finish all my questions and I'll just hear the responses. So I'm interested to hear about what are our legal tools if we're not happy with the way that it's going. Right now, we are aware there is already a lawsuit that's being brought by some districts. We're curious to learn about whether we're interested in joining that lawsuit if we're not happy with it, if it's going to be a option to decision to be voted on. Next question is, as a community, what can we do? As residents, what can we do to voice our concerns in addition to sending that letter templated by the coalition website?
So we'll be passing a resolution that allows us, as Mr. Spencer said, to push forward with litigation if we think it makes legal sense and the timing is right. It's very technical and we've spent a lot of time on it, but so far there's no observable harm to any district. So timing of a lawsuit is important, and it's an important step in the legal process. I would say, you know, from where the audience sits, where the members of the community sit, I think this is more, personally, I think this is more a political issue, and it's something that you should talk to your local representatives, state representatives, anybody in the political channels. I'm sure you've been following the news. There are people who are out there advocating. I think that's a big part of this. I think we've seen changes to the FAQs. Once again, my opinion is because of the political pressure that people people have raised the issues, the letter writing that we've undertaken. Some school districts are lining up to litigate. The timing obviously is still somewhat TBD. We've had discussions with all those parties. We understand their position. We've been in contact with them. We're forming our own view as this process kind of seasons. I mean, we're still like Mr. Spencer said, the FAQs are changing, and if the comment period comes and they make all the changes that we've suggested and other districts have suggested, I think this kind of hopefully dies and just becomes more of a suggestion and something where we collaborate, which we already do. Dr. Sinha does and other districts already do. If we get through that process and it appears that the language is going to, look or feel something like it's compulsory, we have options to litigate if that's the ultimate end step. The resolution that we're looking to pass tonight gives us the option to proceed forward when we vote on it. If it passes, it'll give us those tools to do that at the right time. This is a day-to-day, hour-to-hour issue, so it's not like, what I say today and what anybody here says today might change tomorrow. So I don't want to sit there and say that we have all the facts today, but as it stands today, what Mr. Spencer said is correct. And so we're prepared to act if we need to.
Thank you. That's all my questions so far. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions on regionalization?
My name's Neha Wadwa. I live on Lee Road here in Garden City. This might be a very naive question. I'm relatively new to understanding the plan and the proposal, and I'm really glad to hear about the efforts that the district is taking. So thank you. The one question I really have is, it's clear the message has changed in an FAQ. To me, that's just communications to appease people's fears a little bit, but that doesn't necessarily change the underlying objective of what even inspired a planning process like this. So could you offer some clarity into what the ultimate objective is? And then if an FAQ is getting changed from, we want to implement a plan to, we just want there to be some collaboration, how that shifts then the objective and how the state or the would satisfy their original objective, or have they changed their objective based on the collaboration that's required? Because to me, that seems like a very naive, but a simple and obvious question to ask as well. And I don't know if there's any clarity from the state on that.
So I would say that there's not sufficient clarity from the state. I would say that I have a personal dose of healthy skepticism of what the ultimate end game is. The process has concerned me. It just seems awfully quick in a tight timeline without the feedback that we think something like this might require. So I can't speculate as to what their motives are, but I wouldn't speculate that the process has been poor, in my opinion, and executed poorly. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of districts ourselves. People are very concerned, uneasy about what the true intentions are, but I can't speculate on what
So
they are.
Was
but-
October the first time this ever came out, or is there information from before that?
So
about
this came to us relatively quickly. So
Yeah.
it was in September where we first learned of this, that this was going through.
Okay.
And then since then, we have all, as districts, even us as superintendents, this has been our topic of conversation, I think, at every single meeting on exactly some of those things. What does it mean? What do we need to do? And why is this timeline so, it's pretty strict,
Yeah.
the timeline. So, and I do think that the FAQs changing is because they're listening and they're hearing some of the concerns that districts have and communities have. And I do think like the next meeting with the Board of Regents will be an important one, which is coming up in December, and seeing what, what comes out of that meeting.
Okay, thank
So we'll be keeping a close eye on that.
Thank you. And apologies if this has already come out, but like, I guess in terms of keeping the community informed, are there going to be more regular updates like outside of our scheduled meetings to keep the?
If there needs to be, yes. I think we have scheduled meetings, but if we need to have subsequent meetings because of something happens in terms of timelines, we will have, we'll have additional meetings. I would say, if I was speculating, I think some of the concerns I have are around the state's finances, and I think some of the concerns or maybe some of the push around this has to do with that. That's, me speculating, but it's not too hard sometimes to read tea leaves. And so I don't know how budgets will impact their decision in this process, but that's something we're keeping a close eye on. And I would say, sorry, when Dr. Sinai, I'll let you jump in a second, but there has been communications with the governor on this. I've seen them. It has been with some school districts. There has been conversations with NYSERD. There's been interactions with them. So this is not something that we're just talking about and we're kind of, whistling in the hallway to ourselves. The political powers that be are actually, they're aware, and I think they're starting to get our concerns. And I think politically they don't like what they're hearing because people are very upset about it. So once again, back to my earlier statement, I would suggest that if you have a chance, look at our website, write a letter to your local politician, make a phone call. The more you do, the more you have your friends do it, the more I think the chances of a resolution that's consistent with what I think most of the people here want and what the board wants is, a likely scenario.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions?
Hi, Peter Malahy, One Rockaway. Just some dumb questions. Why not take a vote now? Publicizing the consent of no on this going forward. Why wait? Second question is why not start a legal fund now? Publicize it. Why wait? I don't understand why you're waiting till the 15th or even January. Make it known where you stand, where the public stands, and they got the financial resources to drag this on through the next governor election.
So the resolution we're passing today, I think will make it very, very clear if our previous letters posted have not. I mean, we've publicly taken a stance.
Will you take the vote today?
We will take a vote
Because
today
then
on a
that's what-
resolution that
It says
I
no.
can, I guess we could do. I'll read the resolution that we will be voting on.
Will you also take start the legal fund now with the financials? Why not put
So,
it together?
so we have the,
We need to take action rather than waiting, because they're not changing the words. The FAQ is useless. You're not going to bring an FAQ into court. So if the original language, not the emergency, was requirement, that hasn't changed. And you've been very nice with them and responding and communicating with them because you're professionals. But They haven't changed a word. So I just think it's a little naive to wait.
I would say nobody here is naive. I share some of your
I'm
sentiments.
saying the process is naive.
No,
to take.
I do. I know it's not personal. I agree. I think we have the legal resources. Part of it is the timing. The timing is important to litigate. There's been no
You could prep for that, filing litigation.
all preparations like you're suggesting have been done. I think we've been preparing for the better part of a month. We've been talking with Mr. Spencer. Ms. Gaffney over here is very sophisticated in a lot of these issues. It's been super helpful. We've been talking to other districts, other council and districts. We've been in contact with the person who is potentially leading the lawsuit. So all avenues are being touched. Just for clarity for you and for everybody here, instead of waiting on the resolution, I'm happy to read it to you before we vote on it. But the resolution. Okay. So the resolution is, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garden City Schools will consider pursuing all available legal remedies to the full extent of the law should the New York State Department of Education fail to withdraw or substantially amend their proposed regionalization plan in a manner that aligns with the interests and satisfactions of the Garden City School District by the conclusion of NYSED's December 9/10/2024 session. All in favor? Aye. So that resolution has been passed, and that is now our official stance.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any other questions?
Hello, my name is John Dong, and parents of 2 children. And a lot of the questions that's been asked and it's been clear on my end, but I also have one last concern that I just want to make sure, since with the districts is pulling data for New York State Education Department, considering the data is very sensitive, in this situation, especially we are opposing the plan, is there a way we can postpone or even reject this request?
The answer to that is no. They have the right to ask for that information under NYSED regulations, if I'm correct. So no, it's information they already have anyway. We did ask that question when it first came out. Are we sharing information that we shouldn't be sharing or that we are not required to share? The answer is no, we have to share it, and they have most of it anyway, which is part of the frustration, asking for information that they already have probably in their system somewhere. It's probably not very well organized, but they're asking for it again. So that's part of their authority. That's always been part of their authority. They will make ad hoc requests at times, and we have to comply. It's a requirement.
Now, this information has been shared before, or this is the first time?
It's been.
They you know, what Mr. Cilio was saying, a lot of the student information around whether the testing, the assessment data, they have all of that. There's some additional data that they're requiring, which is, you know, from our business office around transportation, the costs of that. They have all of these information in different formats. They're asking it for us to give it based on the way they want it, I should say. And what that is frustrating, because they have all this information, most of it, I would say at least 80% of this information they have. They're asking it in a format that I think is going to be easier for them to make certain, analyze it in a different way. That's the only thing I could think of. But it is frustrating. We were putting off completing any of this because we were like, why do we have to complete something that they already have?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that voting. That was really energizing for everybody, I'm sure. I have one last follow-up question for me. Is there any way for parents that live in Garden City but do not have kids of K or above to sign up to any kind of like portal for communication?
Oh,
To receive communication?
through like Parent Square portal that we have.
Yes.
you can sign up for it. I will, I'll have Tina take your name down and
please.
see how we can share any of our communication.
Right,
with
yeah,
you.
I
Because
think
right
the
now-
plan is to do
The
everything
district.
on the website. I
Yeah.
think
Yes,
we're
I
going
visit
to
the
keep
website.
doing that because I
Right.
think that's the best way for everybody to touch it.
Right, that's right. But I believe there are emails sent out sometimes for parents that have kids in the schools right now. I have kids, but they're very young, so I'm not on any of those email lists. I just want to be more informed more frequently.
Yeah, the website is definitely your best way to get that information. If you go on the Board of Education, they have a tab that's advocacy.
Yeah.
That has all the information regarding the actions that the district is taking, for sure. The other thing I would also recommend for any of our parents who don't have children in the district is definitely listen to the board meetings, because you can listen to it virtually, and then we also post it on our website, and that's a great way for you to get information also in terms of advocacy.
Thank you.
And social media also, we post a lot on our Facebook page, Garden City Facebook page, and also the Instagram.
Thank you.
So just a quick comment. Joe is skeptical here. I'm skeptical here. Those who know me, I get paid to be suspicious when I have nothing to be suspicious about. But that being said, it's encouraging that this many people are here. This last week, there were 3 people here. So I think the word is getting out. My point is, to your point, there are a lot of people. My kids will be out of school in 2 years, but my home values are very tied to the school district. So I think talk to your neighbors who don't have kids, get them to send those letters. Like the old shampoo commercial, tell 2 people, tell them to tell 2 people, because this is a fraction of what we had last week. And I'm encouraged, I'm glad. Audie was a little scared, but I said, it's okay. But all seriousness, also, we talked about some towns, we're not the Board of Trustees in the town. I think the town would be another place to have the town trustees send a letter opposing it. A lot of towns, and I'm sure they will, we're in contact. But I think coming from you would be better. But as many people as you can get, listen, those facts change. If the pressure stops, it'll change again. So thanks for coming.
Just to echo some of that sentiment, I think something that Dr. Sinha had touched on is obviously the timeline. Education happens 12 months, but the beginning of the year and the end of the year is really like our tax season. That's when it really hits big. And for the state to really kind of put that around that timeline, it just raises that level of skepticism. I know that there are a lot of words here that frighten some people, like mandate and emergency. And again, President Cilio had mentioned this before. I mean, we've been on countless meetings. We have posed questions to the state that they have not been able to give us answers to. One point that was made was, why should we trust you to get this done when you cannot give us results of a state exam in a matter of 5 months? So there's a level of frustration that exists here. A special shout out to Principal Steingrubner, because a few weeks ago, Nassau County Executive Blakeman was at the football game, and I was stalking him. And I was talking with Principal Steingrubner, and he's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm waiting for Blakeman. I'm going to get him. I'm going to talk to him about regionalization." He handed me a pass and got me right onto the field. I approached him, and he was, to put this lightly, very upset with the approach of regionalization. He had said that he has no business being in education. He said, "That is my job. That is our job of the district and the board." And he was very encouraging. He said that please, if there was anything that he could do personally, he would be willing to help. And again, I know that President Cilio and Trustee O'Donoghue have said this before, obviously, and Mr. Spencer and Dr. Sinha. I would get the word out. I would get the word out to friends. I would get the word out to elected officials. I would really put as much pressure on them as humanly possible, because we can do it, and we're going to send, but right now we're one letter. But if you take every person in this room and you start writing letters, everything else, now that's multiplied quite significantly.
Any other questions?
My name is Jiang Zhang. I have 3 children in the school district. I'm happy to hear the resolution that you just passed. I think the language is still a little mild because we don't like their modifications. We want outright reject the idea. I think that should be our goal. Aside from that, this morning I see a data that from Newsday saying 48.1% of Long Island students that failed that just passed the state test. And then the 3rd grade ELA data that showed up from our schools since 2021 to 23-24, it dropped from 91 to 85 to 74 to 66. Does that concern you? Are we having any plans to help?
So I will tell you, we are reviewing the data, Mrs. Bowman, Dr. Bowman, sorry, and the staff are aware of those numbers. We will be having a meeting I think it's the next meeting in December, to walk through that data and also the plan around the issues just raised. So it's something we're aware of, where we all take it very, very seriously, and we'll be talking about it in public in the coming weeks. So please come to the next meeting. We can, maybe adequately address your questions and any other questions that you might have after you hear the report from Dr. Bowman. Any other questions at this time? Not seeing any other questions. So maybe at this time, Dr. Sinhel, will you go through your superintendent's report?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Cilio. So just several accolades that I wanted to mention. Our marching band, they had a wonderful season. They performed at the U.S. Bands Division 2A National Championship, and they were awarded in 9th place. The group also received 5th for visuals and 4th for color guard. And we're really proud of our students, and of course, Mr. Delamonica, who really leads the marching band. He's our band director. And we're looking forward to their continued success. Every year, our marching band continues to grow in leaps and bounds. This past weekend, we had our high school fall production of Clue. I don't know if many of you saw that. It was unbelievable. It was an amazing, amazing show. And you started the show laughing, ended up laughing, and you were at the edge of your seats the whole time. We have very, very talented kids in our district, again, showcasing our theater arts program. What I really enjoyed was seeing a lot of our young students coming to the shows, and really, you think about these kids from our elementary, middle, and schools coming, and it was packed. I think every single day we had a wonderful, the production each day was wonderful. And we also have alums that come back to cheer on our students. So we appreciate that. And our talented teachers, Miss Angela McLaughlin and Miss Ali Frazzetto, who really who guides our students in this production they did. For our athletic season, we've had a wonderful, wonderful season. I'm going to be mentioning just briefly, but they'll be back at a later meeting where we'll honor all of our athletic teams. So just in terms of, there were 3 students that represent the district in the New York State Championships: Ryan McAulay for cross country, Maddie Gephardt, and Charlotte Kona for swimming. Our girls soccer team were Nassau County champions. Our field hockey team were Long Island champions, and our boys soccer team, they won the school's first New York State Championship. So we're really, really proud of them. Our football team, just this past Saturday, won a 53rd consecutive game in Long Island record, and also won the 9th consecutive for Nassau County Championship. They'll be playing again this Saturday for the Long Island Championship. So we hope to see many of you there. And our soccer coach, Coach Paul Cutter, was named Nassau County and Regional Coach of the Year. Very, very well deserved. So again, a great season for our student athletes, and we'll honor them later in some of the upcoming meetings. And, you know, one of the things between our productions and our athletic events, what really showcases that it's Garden City community, we show up for our kids. And it is a true community event that I've never seen in any other place. It's nice to see so many of our families coming together. I have a couple more updates, but I would like Dr. Mo Bowman to give an update on the Superintendent's Conference Day we had recently and the curriculum work that's been taking place in the district.
Absolutely. We had on November 5th, our full day of learning Superintendent's Conference Day. We're excited to report that we were able to accommodate our UPK teachers from both our Harbor Daycare site as well as Homestead, all the way through our 12th grade students at the middle school for a full day of learning. The day was jam-packed. Each teacher engaged in a building level PD. We had curriculum-based professional development where, for example, our UPK teachers reviewed developmental milestones, academic readiness, the CPSC process. Our primary and elementary teachers engaged in professional development around read alouds, problem-based learning. There was training on foundations and words their way. And our secondary teachers were very busy with curriculum articulation in both ELA and social studies, with the focus on assessment in both of those subject areas, as well as building thinking classrooms in mathematics, which is about hands-on learning. In anticipation of the shifts in the science Regents exams, as well as the science standards, our science teachers were unpacking investigations, like in 7th grade, the Cool-It investigation, as well as in earth science and biology. And there were revisions done to our labs and physics classes as well. But there was also some opportunity for teachers to have choice. So there were sessions about AI Playground where our teachers learned new ways to deal with and use and incorporate AI, not only as a tool for efficiencies on their part, but how to incorporate it into instruction. So it can be an instructional tool. There are sessions around the work Anxious Generation, which has been a One District, One Book initiative. Many of our teachers expressed interest in becoming part of that. And so sessions were devoted to that. There were debate sessions on digital media literacy, elevating science using data from NASA, and of course, navigating Linkit, which is one of our data systems that we use as a district. So all in all, it was a very, very busy day. And our teachers were very excited to have had the opportunity to really engage in some of that lifelong learning that we like to have everybody model for our students.
Okay. And what about the curriculum articulation work?
Sorry. And then 2 days later, we did continue with the work that we've been doing over years. I say we, as if I've been here because I feel like I have been. Several years worth of the curriculum articulation that has been done with the consultant Angela Laylor. We had administrators spend a full day where we were focusing this year. Really, if you break it down, it's all about alignment, making sure that what we teach is aligned with what we assess, which is aligned with what the expectations are for both the standards and the assessments that the children are going to end up facing at the conclusion of a year or a unit. And so we looked to make sure that those things are in place, but also how we as administrators would be aligned when we were giving feedback to teachers on their instruction so that they don't get mixed message based on who it is that's giving them the feedback. We also spent some time using AI to help facilitate some of that work and make sure that we were embedding as well, separate from the AI work, embedding literacy instruction into all of the work that we're doing, highlighting the skills that we know our students need more development with, as well as capitalizing on what we are already very strong at doing. We also worked on making sure that there's interdisciplinary work happening. So if it's a content area course, we wanted to make sure that we're embedding literacy in that, and especially at the elementary level where time is the one commodity that there never is enough of, being really efficient with our use of time to make sure we're covering and making sure that the students learn in each of the content areas and bolstering their literacy support as well.
Thank you, Dr. Bowman. And then just a couple of items on the agenda. We have 3 resignations on the agenda tonight. One is of Mr. Dave Parada. He's our assistant principal at the high school. He's been here for the last 20 years. And, you know, when I think of Mr. Parada, I think of 2 things, is pure care. He cares deeply, and commitment. Those are the two things. And, we'll be honoring him along with the other two retirees later, but he's had a significant impact on our high school here. And it's hard to imagine our high school without Mr. Parada, but he'll be retiring at the end of the year. Two other retirements that are on the agenda. One is a bus driver, Yvonne Lagoso, and a cleaner, Roberta Orlana from Stratford. They both started here in 2001. Again, they will also be missed, and we will honor them later in the year as well. There are several grants on the agenda. We're accepting this evening through SEPTA, Special Education PTA, over $27,000 in grants. And all of these, the grants that they have approved or they are giving to us, they all touch children in some way. They're all part of anywhere from, flexible furniture to sunshine cart to music therapy books and everything else you can think of. But we really support. We are very supportive of SEPTA and what they do for us. We're also accepting this evening $12,000 from Friends of STEAM, and those funds will help us at our high school in the computer lab. And on the agenda, there are also several special education agreements this evening, along with transportation agreements. And then just a reminder for on Wednesday, Thursday and Friday schools are closed. Wednesday, all schools will close early for the annual test of emergency evacuation plan. A letter was sent out to parents regarding that about 2 weeks ago. So, and finally, on behalf of administration and staff, we want to wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving, and thank you for all your support. And, I always think around this time of the year, we have so much to be grateful for. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the board? It's muted. You have a question? We're opening up for citizens' questions, so I see two more questions. So fire away. Whoever wants to go first.
We joined the coalition lawsuit against the plan.
At this time, we are not joining, but we will have further updates on that in the next week or so.
This year, right? We are voting for against the lawsuit immediately. No further delays.
I appreciate the sentiment. I think the thing that we were discussing earlier, it's about standing and harm. We are evaluating those options, and we will have, like I said, a decision by the 10th on whether we even need to commence or litigate a lawsuit. So when the comment period ends, we'll evaluate that. I think, we've looked at the lawsuit. We understand it. We understand the players involved. I think, the plan is to potentially file that in the coming weeks, so they might align with our timeline. I think the expectation is they will. So there'll definitely be more conversations about it. But at this time, there's no decision to be made on that just yet. 'Cause it hasn't been filed, and I mean, Mr. Spencer, yeah,
Just to address
Ms. Gaffney.
So filing a lawsuit, it's like Mr. Spencer and President Tilio just said, it's a lot about timing, and it's a lot about when the appropriate time to file is. And we are doing the requisite preparation to do that. So I don't want anyone to think that we aren't. So there's a lot of conversations that have gone on, a lot of legal research that has gone on to make sure that we mount the most effective litigation possible. And so, as President Cilio has said, that we are monitoring what the right timing to be for that litigation.
So what's our stand on joining the coalition?
So just like President Cilio said, our stand is to keep monitoring to figure out when the right time to file the litigation is. And so we are taking all the correct preparations and legal research and consultations on when we can mount the most effective litigation to win when we do that. And it's currently not now.
And just to be clear in the process, if they file, it's not that we can't join that lawsuit if they file tomorrow, it doesn't mean we cannot join that lawsuit. There are a lot, questions and legal issues that we're working through, but I would say if nothing changes in the comment period and things seem to align with what everybody is fearing and what we fear, then that could be the appropriate next step. It appears that that might be the appropriate next step, but we're hopeful that this comment period, although not naive, that changes will be made and that this issue will go away for us.
But what is the loss of just saying that we're gonna join them? Like just to
We could be thrown out of court for a lack of standing, right?
Well,
Potentially.
right, there are a number of issues with joining a lawsuit prematurely. I'm not going to reflect on what those are right now or provide the community with legal advice that I would otherwise provide to my client. I just can't do that. But what I can say is this, all that is required of the school district at this time is to complete a survey, submit data, and engage in a meaningful discussion with the component school districts of the BOCES. That's what's required of the school district as of right now.
But I think this is not a strong opposition to the plan. Just like Locust Valley, Manhattan said, other school districts, they jump in, show their attitude.
Well, I'm not going to comment on what other school districts are doing right now or their approach. I believe that the Garden City School District's approach right now is a well-reasoned and fiscally responsible approach. When the time comes, as Mr. Cilio said, the school district and its attorneys are monitoring the situation very carefully. Hold on, wait. Let me finish, okay? When you ask a question, you have to wait for me to finish answering it, okay? Fair? Okay, so so what we're doing is we're watching what the state does, okay? Now, hopeful, right? Like Mr. Cilio said, that after the comment period is over, the regulation is modified to reflect what the community is asking, what the boards are asking, what school districts are asking, right? So to the extent that's the case, the board will consider its options, but it's unlikely that a lawsuit will be necessary or something that the school district will contemplate. But we're not quite at that point yet. There hasn't been, and I'll use this term kind of lightly at this point, cognizable harm to the school district, right, at this time. So because of that, the board and the district are not willing to put in the financial resources into a suit, right, until the timing is right. It's all about timing. So as Mr. Cilio said, and Ms. Gaffney said, so that's where we are right now. We're monitoring, we're preparing, right? So we're hopeful for the best, but we'll be prepared for the worst.
Good. Doug, maybe I'll just handle this. I don't think we're watching. I don't want to state any more of our maybe legal strategy in public for lots of different reasons, but we understand your comment. We share a lot of the same views. I'm not a lawyer, so maybe in some ways I should speak less and let that play out. But I suspect that things might change, but if they don't, I think that's the next step, right? And we're talking days. It's we're a couple of days away from the end of this period, and I think we will probably have to have another meeting depending on what materializes in the next couple of days. I mean, we're monitoring it daily. I spend more time on it than my job, so.
So the comment period ends in about 2.5 weeks. So the expectation is that after the Regents meets and the comment period ends, is that there'll be, the changes will be reflected in the regulations. So essentially what we're waiting for is this 2 to 3 week period to see if the regulations are modified to coincide with what the school district or school districts plural and the communities are looking for. So that's kind of our linchpin. From that point, the board will meet and decide how it's going to proceed, whether that involves litigation or something else. Okay.
Sure, go ahead, Miss.
I've heard this conversation before, about sharing, resources, blending districts. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do not think this is the first time this conversation has come up where that the government has tried to implement or tried to, I don't know that they've tried to in the past, but I definitely think this is not new. I don't know. I've heard it before. But that being said, so here we are, we're talking litigation, we're talking lawsuits. Okay. But if we go on the fact that this is not the first time that we've heard it, because where I used to live, it used to come up. How do we fix this going forward? Like, are there discussions? Should there be discussions amongst the school districts? Because the government's behaving in such a way that is putting so much pressure on the school districts, whether it be Garden City to defend itself for the resources that it has, or Roosevelt, who can't even who can't even manage what they've got. I mean, all these districts are affected so differently, but in the end, it's all kind of negative. So how do we implement that discussion? Because we can sue, right? Or we can drag it on or whatever, go to bat with the government, but if, or the state, but if they keep behaving in such a way that puts all this pressure on these districts, where are we going?
Political. I mean, it's got to go through the state. It's got to go through your legislators. Yeah. Yeah. But outside of that, you sue and you win. If you win, that's great. It's a game of whack-a-mole. I get it. I mean,
So,
policy many years ago, when they wanted to do stuff, and Kate Murray was like, no, but that was all good. So now we have a much more horrible situation where there's going to be a casino as opposed to an overdeveloped coliseum at the time. And so now there's suits and there's this and there's that. And, it doesn't seem like anybody ever comes up with ideas, like you just want to sue and hope for the best as opposed to opening discussions and trying to move forward. Because I just feel like we're in this vicious cycle. I don't know that any of you can answer, but
no,
I might be able to help a little bit, tiny bit. So, yeah. So I'll maybe I can provide you a little bit. So what you're referring to, I think it was the better part of a decade ago. The state was heavily pushing consolidation, if you remember that, right? A lot different than what they're doing now, but pushing or encouraging, right? We'll use that word, smaller school districts to consolidate, larger school districts to consolidate with the smaller ones. So that would reduce, right, state funding and tax burdens and so on and so forth. That was the hope, right? So if this is any indication of how that went, right, I'm probably the only one in the room other than maybe you that remembers that. So there's the glint of hope, right? Is that in a couple of years from now, we won't remember we're sitting here talking about it, right? So go ahead. Go ahead.
I have to grow up in Stratford. So that means that nobody wants to play on school. Nobody wants to lose their identity with Malvern Mules,
Mhm.
the Rocks, what have you. But what they did do was they looked at what they did have and they blended some of those things. So they couldn't feel like lacrosse teams because they didn't have enough kids. So they now have like a Rockaway Malvern lacrosse team, a Rockaway Malvern soccer team. They blended those things so that the kids in Malvern who, or the kids in Rockaway who maybe didn't have all the resources that in Garden City. would have,
That's what they want to do.
what I'm like,
So
saying,
that,
not we,
right, but that's the optimism that you're looking for there, right? So this is not the model that they tried to introduce a decade ago. What they're looking at now is this collaborative model that you're talking about now, that school districts are already doing. But, you know, the rationale behind this, we'll call it special regulation, right, emergency regulation, was in looking down the throes of decreased funding, how can we distribute or redistribute, in the words of the state, collaborate by and among school districts with respect to services, right? In the face of these dwindling resources, right? So the model that you use, right? Shared sports teams, right? That's what we're looking at, right? That's what we're optimistic about is what they're talking about is things like that. Shared sports teams, shared academics, right? Programs, clubs, things like that, that would reduce, spending by school districts. So for example, if one school district, it's an exorbitant cost to have a sports team for one school district, where a neighboring school district has it already, right? So it would only cost pennies on the dollar for us to collaborate with a neighboring school district to bring in the pool team, the bowling team, whatever, right? That's the kind of collaboration we're talking about, but more so than sports academics, right? Does that mean we're busing kids in? No. Does that mean we're consolidating school districts? No. You're not going to see the Garden City Hempstead School District, right? That's not something that this contemplates. This contemplates collaboration by districts to share resources, right? Consensually. That's the big thing. That's the change that school districts like Garden City are looking for, is for the, it's okay, go ahead.
One of the issues, for the, I don't know who the people are, but the discussions I feel like we all, Garden City might have been pockets for expediting lawsuits, but at the end of the day, it's still a grind, it still gets caught up, it still takes time, money, and resources, and it takes away other things that these kids could have, that money could be used for other than suing the state or what have you. Now, that being said, going back to what you were saying, I don't know how long ago, I was 15 years ago, referencing Roosevelt, I'm trying to teach there, their budget didn't pass, right? And so the football team wasn't gonna be able to play. They are a reputable football team in a small division, and so Oyster Creek program fought that to fund us. Grants and funding, they reinstate their football program because all of those young men who play go on to Division I, not all, but many of them go Division I in sports, and they get scholarships, and they get, chance at a life that they otherwise wouldn't. So Oyster Bay comes in and helps them. So I'm wondering, why can't, maybe that's something districts could do.
Well, I would just say this is because I appreciate your sentiment and I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but I don't think we can solve that right now, but we understand your point. I do think unless people have other questions, we need to kind of move on to, I think we maybe have one more question. We'll look into that. I think we're fighting the fight that needs to happen right now, and we'll review that once we kind of get through what's clearly, unfortunately, the most pressing issue. So I think Ms. Meany, you have a question, so.
First, before I ask my question, I just want to say thank you for all your efforts. I trust you. I know that you were working very hard behind the scenes to make sure that this does not happen. So I'm not even going to ask a question about that. I'm back to curriculum. I just want to ask the staff, how are we evaluating the professional development sessions and what systems are in place or are being put in place to evaluate the curriculum that is being written currently?
want to forget either part. Okay. So as far as evaluating the PD sessions that took place on Superintendent's Conference Day, is that your question?
In general, not any specific day, just in general, is there a system in place that takes care of that?
Okay, so I'll answer it for Superintendent's Conference Day and then it'll extrapolate out. We did send out from Superintendent's Conference Day a feedback form to learn what people's experiences were. Then one of my roles is to code it, which then take it from there and say, okay, so now what are the things that the teachers are saying that they needed more of? What did they say that they learned a great deal of? Some of the questions that we asked had to do with the applicability immediately in the classroom and how it was going to help and, inform their practices. And so a similar perspective is what is used to evaluate the professional development that's provided by the district for teachers throughout the course of the year. And then systems to evaluate curriculum. I mean, we are always in a never-ending cycle of curriculum evaluation and evaluating if what we're doing is working for our kids. Part of it, of course, is about evaluating how our students perform on external assessments, but it's also on a daily basis. Is this child learning? Is that, with that particular resource being implemented, or is this group of students being successful after having received instruction with this particular resource that's put into place? So there are multiple measures that are always used to evaluate curriculum.
Okay, can I be more specific then? Can I ask if we have teachers working collaboratively to look at student work, and do we have those work samples available to show growth?
Okay, so the first part of the question is, do we have teachers working collaboratively to evaluate student work? Yes. And then the second part?
Do we have the work, the student work, that we can take a look at to see the student growth within, showing that the curriculum is working?
So we do have portfolios of student work so that you can see from beginning to end of year how a particular student grows. But are you asking that, or are you asking? do
Yes,
we
I'm
have
asking
examples?
that. And in order to actually see that well, they have to have rubrics. They have to have something that we can measure so that we can see the measurements of growth within specific areas, within specific students, within specific classrooms, on grades, and so on and so forth. That's what I'm looking for.
So in daily practice, there may or may not be rubrics with every single activity that a child encounters during the course of the day, or every piece. Every
No,
item.
cumulative work, I'm saying, not
Right, so
daily.
rubrics, and yes, there are measures that are used to evaluate student work and student progress, and those are generally used, we use rubrics to measure that growth.
Great, thank you. I look forward to seeing them. Thank you. Have a good evening.
At this time, we're going to move to consent agenda, which allows me to approve items as outlined. If any board member wishes to have an item pulled out, please advise. But at this time, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, which includes business of the board items H1 through H3, personnel matters I1 through I7, business office matters J1 through J32, curriculum and instruction matter K1, and special education matters L1 through L6. Second, all in favor? Aye. Is there any new business from the board? No. Any new business from the administration? Future Board of Education meetings, Tuesday, December 10th, 2024, Board of Education Public Works, Section 815. The Student Achievement Report will be presented, which is the data, sir, that you were asking about earlier. And then there's a regular session Tuesday, December 17th, 2024 at 8:15 here at the high school. It's a regular session. May I have a motion that the board move into the executive session to discuss matters relating to legal matters? All in favor? Aye.